there's so much freedom in knowing that you can pivot in your marriage. But I think a lot of dudes don't think that. And maybe even wives don't think that your marriage can pivot. Your marriage can end without divorce and you can move on right to something new.
In those death moments, what encourages you, what gives you hope, when you're going through those things, or at least for me, I mean, it feels awful.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say, oh my gosh, I feel so hopeful in this terrible moment. Like it's realistically for me, it didn't happen.
1, 2, 3, 4.
What's good, beautiful people? Welcome to 2.5 Husbands, where we celebrate becoming better husbands.
It's 2.5, even though there are 3 husbands, and that's because at some point, one of us, if not all of us, was not fully the husband that we were supposed to be.
And that's why we actually come here on a weekly basis to discuss some of the issues that we face, some of the issues we are seeing around us, and we hope that the journey that we started with you and for you is going to benefit you,
and yours.
I mean, you're the first of many, or the many of first. What's the correct phrase?
Don't know what
First
do you say?
white guy, you first of many.
Am I? I mean, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, let's see, bro. You know.
I'm the pioneer for my my race.
Wow. Wow. That's how we started this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad to be, making a mark, and just by being here, I've already done something great.
You've killed it.
Yeah.
Anything else that you're gonna say here is a bonus, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
Thanks,
I guess.
brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
I'll maybe refer some of the white guys onto you.
Come on, let's do it. Maybe let's do an actual
plug. If you don't know any, I can
look at this camera and say to all the white guys.
To all the white guys.
It's official.
It's official.
You can watch this podcast.
You can watch this podcast.
And this message.
You can be in this podcast thanks to me.
My name is Michael Ryman, and I endorse this message.
Yes.
Yo, man, what's up, Micho?
Yeah, good to chat and be behind bright lights and a microphone. Very different to our usual coffee setup.
Yeah, that's cool, bro.
You're not even drinking coffee.
You're not even drinking coffee this time
water.
around. Yeah. You know what the thing is about you? You're very honest. There's a few people in my life, and I haven't lived that long, that I've met who are genuinely honest, and as honest as sinful people can be.
Yeah, I'm not that honest.
You're very, very clear with, how you feel.
Yeah, not to the point of offending you, I hope.
That was early on in our friendship, but it's because I didn't know you.
Yeah.
So
I think I probably tanked a lot of relationships just by being me. Yeah.
In hindsight,
it came out in a few psychology sessions where we were like, maybe don't be that honest.
Why don't I have friends?
So I was like, where is everyone?
Yeah, that was cool, man. We've been friends
like either you like that or you don't, I guess.
Yeah, bro.
So
and that's the
it's
thing.
Very polarizing.
I dug that about you. It was just so refreshing,
Thanks, man.
Like just being in the arts world, or where people tend to not be genuine.
Yeah, superficial, I guess. Yeah. Very much.
Yeah, and that's like to an extent Joburg culture as well.
Yeah,
where
definitely.
Even those, I mean, you were born here,
Mm.
so I think even for us who were
very much
born and grew up here, we also tend to fall for the lie of Joburg. Just don't show people who you are. People came here to work and make money. Don't try and establish long-term relationships. Work and go back home. But for us, home is here. So, but it was so refreshing again for you to just be, as honest as you've always been. And the cool thing is you think deeply about stuff. So that's the thing I've always appreciated. It's not like, you're honest and you're just like speaking out of your bum or whatever.
It's never a good combination because there are those people as well who will just say the first thing that pops into their head.
Yeah.
So it's good to have some kind of filter.
Yeah, but filters have saved my life, especially in awkward situations. So, anyway.
Yeah. There's definitely people far more blunt than me.
No, sure. Yeah.
I struggle to be around them.
Yeah, sure. Maybe because they're not nice.
Maybe,
you
yeah.
can be blunt and just be...
whatever is in your heart, I guess, is going to come out.
You're 6 years this year.
Yeah, and you're going to be 10 if my
10,
math
bro.
is checking
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I just added 4.
So you
It
hitting...
seemed like quite a milestone.
It is.
Do you get
It is.
a medal?
I think we're going to get a... probably like... I don't know. Trophy from like the marriage gods.
Maybe like P&A.
Probably.
Been to P&A in the mall.
Or we just go old school, just get it from CNA.
P&A, CNA, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Get it. Get a little.
just go to China Mall. They have better.
You can ride it
They
on.
have better trophies at China Mall.
Yeah, China Mall for $5.
Yeah.
10 years. What did you get me? A trophy
a
for
trophy.
$5.
That's what I must tell my wife. But it is a milestone. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, it's massive, bro. How's 6 years been?
I guess 6 is. I guess the numbers feel a bit arbitrary because it's hard to remember before.
Yeah.
When you think back, I think it feels like a different life.
Can you even like...
Yeah, if I
Remember.
intentionally think back, but it's not clear. It's not clear. And I don't know why that is, but...
you get a marriage brain. Maybe that's a thing.
Yeah, it feels like it's like a reboot and you get a new life.
Yeah.
This is no longer your identity. You're no longer one. You're no longer yourself. You're not joined. So how's it been? It's been a lot of things. I'd say what sticks out when you look back are the challenges. The pain points. And I don't want to be dramatic, but you think back and I think there's all been a certain amount of suffering for all of us. Like life happens.
Yeah.
And but I think when you frame it in the way that if you understand how those things have changed you and made you who you are now, you think, you would have wanted to avoid, pain if it was, if your wife was experiencing that, or obviously you don't wish that, but I mean, these experiences change you. So definitely a completely different person, going into marriage,
Sure.
I would have never been able to anticipate the things that have happened. And it's been a journey, I guess.
How long did you guys date?
Less than 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so we sort of knew each other from around church, a couple of years, maybe even 4.
Sure.
Sort of saw each other here and there at, after church, in camps, getaways. And then, just have the odd chat and stuff. The one week, when we were both on music, I was playing guitar, she was playing guitar.
Sure.
And then I would be on in the band, and then I'd be helping her pack up her guitar when she was on the next week.
Come on now. Smooth operator.
Yeah, I had to get a few words in to Megan because she wasn't going to be coming up to me. She's very shy.
Yeah.
So she likes to say I stalked her for 4 years.
What did you
when she
think
tells a
about
story.
your like your nature of being honest? Did you find that intimidating? Did you find that refreshing? Or maybe, you know,
That's a really good question, actually.
or maybe you just different with her because you were trying to impress her.
I think I was different with her for sure. Yeah, I think you actually
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really like to think of it that way, but I mean, and maybe I was honest to a degree.
Sure.
I certainly was when I asked her out.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, sure.
In saying that I want to marry you.
We wouldn't be here if you weren't honest about that. So,
You know, that's how I began our relationship.
Yeah.
And she didn't run away.
sure.
So
That's
that's
cool, bro.
surprising,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
But I mean, interestingly, I think I wasn't as, I mean, I think because the stakes are higher. You
Mm-hmm.
think you want to have a relationship with this person, a lifelong one,
Yeah.
potentially. And so that's quite an interesting
Yeah.
point to raise.
Sure. Your parents were married
Yeah.
when you were born. How long are they married for now?
Oh my gosh, I should know. I
But-
don't know.
But it's over 40, I'm guessing.
Over 40 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Or they getting?
yeah, so I'm 31 now. So, I mean, upwards of 35 is my guess.
Probably. Okay.
Yeah. They lived together for a bit before they got married.
Okay.
I don't know what time frame that was.
Yeah. Okay. So 30 plus. Okay, that's cool. And I don't know if you spoke to your dad about like getting married and how to do it the
Yeah.
Ryman way.
I mean, they like to tell the story because, I mean, my father was born in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's about as un-South African as you can get.
Yeah.
And
And he's held on to his accent.
he has. And my mom is South African
Yeah.
with Greek roots.
Yeah.
And they like to describe their getting together as like the big fat Greek wedding.
Ah. That was that
There's
time.
like a lot of
Sure.
resentment in
Yeah.
terms of the man you found is not Greek. Like, what are you from both sides? So,
So your dad's family was like, what are you doing?
no, my mom's family,
Ah.
because
yeah.
she's the Greek one. The Greeks are the ones who very much
Very
like
strong.
stay in the community of Greek,
Yeah.
and they're very
Sure.
strong
Yeah.
willed kind of in that way.
Yeah.
And so I guess they had to sort of overcome those hurdles, and eventually the family came around and
Yeah.
started to, come on board with my dad.
Sure.
And so where they started living at the house where they still live now is
Wow.
where they got married. They got married on this property.
You serious, bro?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Sheesh.
And they invited all their friends, obviously, and got the marquee or tent or whatever. And my dad still talks about this door, this nice door that he has, with
Yeah.
it was like carved elephants, like wildlife of some kind. He still talks about how this guy who was doing the cooking
Yeah.
burnt this door.
It was his favorite door.
He used this door as a thing to like prop up his braai. I mean, like, who does that? So my dad's not quite gotten over that.
Yeah. 30 plus years later.
Yeah, but I mean, I think they look back on it
Yeah.
with like fondness,
Sure.
happy memories.
Sure. That's cool, bro. Did their marriage inspire you to get married?
Wow, no.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, maybe in a sort of sense deep down,
Yeah, sure.
like, I think in a sense that like, my parents have done it, so you automatically feel capable of doing it or something on a maybe subliminal level.
Yeah,
but
sure.
not really, because I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to watch this podcast. Probably not.
Yeah, don't shoot yourself.
Yeah, probably not. But okay, let me just say that And you know, you have to say this with some level of timidity, that
And respect.
I didn't really want to embody or follow in the same
Yeah.
vein as they went,
Sure.
and have the same kind of looking marriage.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I think I've put a lot of effort
Yeah.
into trying to not be like my parents.
Sure.
And in so doing, I'll probably become like more like my dad or
Yeah.
something, you know, because of how weird things are sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's that whole thing of trying to define yourself by what you're not, but you're using that very thing as your
Yeah.
reference.
So it definitely does
But
shape
you
you.
pick up, yeah. So
So-
it shapes you, and you pick
Yeah.
up stuff from there, bro.
But basically, I've tried to look and grab things from people who I've admired, you know, like young couples in the church. Like growing up, I saw this couple who knew each other through youth ministry, and
Yeah.
then they got married and you know, seemed to do it in a quite simple way, and just and I think I looked at that and I went, yeah, I want that.
Sure.
You know, that looks right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so they were fairly young, and that seemed to embody what it should look like. Yeah, so I mean, I admired him,
Yeah.
you know, having been my leader,
yeah.
and I just thought, well, actually, I don't want to do this dating
Sure.
thing. So
Sure.
I decided quite, I don't know, at some point, teen years, where I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I think there's times where you kind of second guess that and question that decision, but I somehow stuck with it,
Yeah.
and I'm glad.
That's dope, bro. That's great, man.
Mm.
We were chatting about how your marriage can end before it ends, or it ends
Ends
without,
before it starts, or what?
or it ends before, or it ends without divorcing, rather. And what I mean by that is just how your marriage, at certain seasons, has to die, so that it could continue living. You know, so, and what dies in those seasons or moments is just patterns that you've picked up. You know, I mean, anyone who comes into marriage, like, if you think you have a manual for this thing, like, that's already, you're on the wrong foot, right? This thing's going to show you flames. Good flames that are going to grow you, build you, make you become a better person. Definitely make you become a better husband if you're not fighting against. I think just some of the fruits that your marriage is bringing out of you, right? And it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but there is joy in all of that. You know, sometimes we speak of marriage and it sounds like this thing that's draggy, it's heavy, it sucks. But I'm like, there's joy, but there's equally like hardship that come baked into how marriage is, because marriage is there to, you know, shape you, change you, in fact, both of you, right? So that in the becoming one, you truly become one. You know, there's certain things about yourself that you're going to have to let go so that you can truly become one with your wife, right? So all of that to say, there's just been points in my marriage, I know, where it's like, wow, this way of doing marriage has to come to an end, right? So it sucks, obviously, when a marriage comes to an end completely and it leads to a divorce, but you will experience your marriage coming to an end several times. But what I mean by that is, again, just some patterns that you need to let go of, you know. So for me, I know recently that happened, and it's happened several times before this recent death as well, right? But recently we realized that, like, just even how we manage our household, so just like the tasks in the house, washing dishes, cooking, getting our daughter ready for school, for bed, keeping the house clean, all of that stuff, just the basic day-to-day practicalities. Like, we had gotten into a lull, man, and it was just rough, right? And there's other things that contributed to that, you know. So just battling with hopelessness, battling with my wife's depression, battling with my feeling despondent when it comes to like my dreams, etc., right? And all of that kind of contributes to the place your marriage finds itself in. And for us, we realized, man, for at least for 3 years, right? So 2021, 2022, and 2023. Yes, we had gotten into a place where like it was just that thing needed to die, and our marriage needed to find new life again. And that's been such a refreshing thing, that there's a way in which we did marriage for the past 3 years that we've put to rest. But it's hard to actually come to that conclusion, because you have to admit that about yourself. Your spouse has to admit that about herself as well, to say, I think this is how I've contributed to where our marriage is now. And especially as a husband who's leading, just having to then take more responsibility and saying, as a leader, I let us get to this place. And so how do I then find ways of getting us out of this place? And that's not an easy thing to do, just at an individual level. But now having to do that and admit to your wife that, hey, I might have failed here, regardless of external factors that contributed to where you guys are, but taking responsibility of the things that you let go of, or things that you might have actively done to, get to,
you take
to
ownership
the point.
of it.
Take ownership of all of it, bro. But it's good to experience now this new breath of life that we have, and this new way of living that we have, so
That's great.
yeah. So just even how the house feels like a new place, how our parenting has changed, and we more, like, one example I'll give you is, we're having dinner, and then I think my daughter was speaking about vomit, right? And
I'm out.
Huh?
I'm out.
We need to talk about you having kids. Anyway, we're eating and she's talking about vomit, as kids naturally do. I mean, if you're eating and you're thinking of food coming back, I mean, it's not a far-fetched thought, so it's okay. Like at least she's her connection skills are on alert. They're high. They're alive. Anyway, so then I'm like, yo, man, you can't speak about vomit while we're eating. And I tend to be the disciplinarian. I tend to be the don't do this guy. We can't do this. This is what's going to happen if you do that. And sometimes I catch myself as a parent thinking, probably I should encourage more, as much as I do discourage certain behavior, but in the same vein, I should encourage, because then I don't want my daughter to just think and remember me as the guy who discouraged her from doing things, but never encouraged her to actually try out stuff. So then my wife responds to me saying, stop talking about vomit, and then she's like, hey, like, what are some good things we can talk about in light of food, right?
Oh, wow.
And so on the spot, I then turn around and say to her, yo, that was actually a dope parenting moment. That was such a good parenting moment,
Yeah.
But before, we wouldn't have had that awareness, and just tag team the way we tag team. So I'm like, I discouraged, she encouraged immediately. And then afterwards, having the awareness of giving her credit and giving her props in the moment. That was such a dope thing, but I think we could only experience that because a version of our marriage had to die last year, and a new version of how we do marriage had to come alive, and it's given us room to do the stuff, and obviously as life goes and as humans are, we're gonna get complacent with this new way of living, and then that has to break so that we can grow again.
Yeah.
And so there is several points in your marriage where your marriage is going to die without you having to divorce. We didn't have to divorce because life was tough then. We just had to let that version of our marriage die. So there's that, So you've done 6 years. We probably had, it's 10, so I've had a lot. But 6 is a lot as well. You probably had
I'd
a lot
say
of those.
logically you would think that there are more deaths in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's when you're like,
sheesh, bro. Yeah.
now trying to live together, that's when you're going to notice
Yeah.
all your very many differences. So,
Sure.
and then I guess over time, the hope and idea is that there should be less points of,
Death.
I don't want to say friction
Mm.
or death.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be a reinventing and changing how you do things. It's interesting to think about because I think it's all based on your circumstance. So something that's going to work for you now when you have kids is, or at least in this stage of your daughter's life,
Yeah.
it's not going to work for when she's a bit older,
Exactly. Yeah.
if you have other kids, X, Y, Z. And I guess you just have to adapt then and be willing to. But I would think that you should have worked through a lot of the things in the beginning parts of the marriage. I don't know if that's our wishful
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
So,
How many times did you guys die at the beginning?
you know, I don't know if there was I can't count and say there was a number.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you look back and you think, shucks, this is how we used to be and this is how we are now.
Yeah.
And you see a transition
Yeah.
and you don't know when it changed really.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe you've now flagged it in your diary on this day. I mean,
I'm gonna start counting
never
our
did that.
deaths.
Yeah, never did that, but you can really see
Yeah.
the change and how our relationship has improved from
Sure.
when, and I think that's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I always give God credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you don't have to, but I do.
No. Yeah.
And,
I do too, bro.
There's definitely those moments where
Yeah.
you are like there's things not working and you're at loggerheads and not agreeing, or now you've had a tense argument
Sure.
and you pray and there's this, a way
Yeah.
forward suddenly, and you think, wow, I didn't do that. We didn't do that. So and I think that's quite a beautiful thing. But something I said earlier to your question about honesty,
Yeah.
and was I honest with Megan? What did she think
Yeah.
of that? Was she put off by that? And I said, I think I was different with her. And I think that has been a defining problem
Wow.
for the beginning parts of our
Wow.
marriage.
Sure.
In a sort of, what is it called? Conflict avoidance kind of way. If we're not fighting, that means we're succeeding at our marriage.
Sure.
And I think having seen my parents fight or shout or argue with each other, and that kind of memory that comes to mind when you're young, is I think it embeds in you a kind of fear that now your parents are going to split up,
Sure.
or whatever the case
Sure.
is. And so that's something that I've always wanted to avoid.
Sure.
And not consciously would I do this, but if there was times where I should have said something or spoken up, I think I would have withheld.
Yeah.
And that has caused a lot of problems down the line.
Sheesh, bro.
So you're going to have to deal with this issue at some point.
Yeah.
But the question is, do you want all of this sort of build up? Because at that point, it's going to explode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think just both of us maybe learning that, to both be vocal about things that are not working for us, or a way that we've interacted with each other that's not okay.
Yeah.
And to talk about that. So I think I would just keep quiet about it, and and in my mind resent her. And maybe she would have sort of a similar experience. I mean, I would always know if she was unhappy about something, but it was almost out of a fear that I wouldn't be responsive to her voice, that it would fall on deaf ears. And I think those are things that we pick up about each other. Like for me, I'm very idealistic and perfectionistic. I want things a certain way. And if they're not like that, then I guess I'm unhappy. And I think maybe she would take that cue and go, okay, well, I'm not going to raise this with Mike because he's
Sure.
not going to understand and be willing to change.
Yeah.
And this is what he's doing.
Sheesh, bro.
And that translated into small things as well as big things. It translated into my career. And me having to actually change my career at a certain point.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
deeply entwined with our relationship,
Sure.
our marriage.
It's crazy that like the very thing I admire about you, you suppressed that. But and that's what I was thinking. Like, why did you do it?
And I think I alluded to it or mentioned it earlier. And
Yeah.
I think it's because of the stakes. I didn't want our relationship to end.
Sheesh, bro.
Even while we were dating or courting, whatever you want to call it, is to not create these points of tension or argument or fighting.
Sure.
It's out of fear that you finally found this person who you believe God wants you to be with, you've prayed for, and now you're like, I need to protect this.
Yeah.
Ironically, by protecting it in the way you think
You're
you're protecting it, you are killing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is ironic that you pray for a wife, believe God grants you one, and then you're like, thanks God, I'll do it my way.
Yeah, I guess, and and like
It obviously doesn't happen consciously.
yeah.
but
Like I don't blame my younger self for that. Like these are kind of these are things that you only see retrospectively.
Yeah.
But I think it's a gift that that they actually come up and you have the opportunity to work on them. And like who knows where we'd be if one of us was reluctant to move in a certain direction.
Yeah, and to even change when change is required.
Yeah. I think God guides us. He directs us in all of these things.
Yeah. You said you don't blame your younger self. That's such a big thing.
Yeah, because I think I only know these things by looking back on them, by you know, and thinking through why did I do that. In fact, now I've never thought of it so clearly as to how you just phrased it, like, and helping me think through why was I not honest with her. It's through talking with people or talking with each other you may realize these things. But it's hard to really understand the deeper issues behind why we behave a certain way.
I mean, even just connecting that experience with your parents to that being a fear that you carry, and you're not consciously reacting from it until you sit down and say, wow, that's probably where the connection was. So, and I asked that question because and I did this as a husband, that I did hate my younger self, and then I'm like, such an idiot, like, logically, I'm like, I'm the older version of me. I'm like, you the idiot. How could you blame your younger self? Because with the knowledge you had, with the experience you had, with the resources you had, what other decisions would you have made, And so I'm like, logically, sure, fair enough. But there's this sense of feeling like, damn, man, like I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. And to some extent, you should. Like, don't get married if you don't know what you're doing, right? Like, you should, to some extent, know what you're getting yourself into and knowing the gravity and the weight of what marriage requires. So I'm like, I mean, it's in the prayer book. When you do your vows and they're like, marriage should not be entered into irresponsibly. And at that point, you're like, sorry, sir, like, I didn't think this one through. I think I was irresponsible. Sorry.
Yeah. Is it too late to?
Yeah.
It's like, shucks.
I want to say it to dudes. I'm like, it's never late until she says I do, bro. What?
No, it's late, man.
Nah.
You've paid for everything.
Leave, bro.
Can't handle this.
Yeah.
Just run out there.
Yeah.
You paid for the catering. Everyone's there.
It's just
you had your chance.
It can be an expensive braai. That's what it can.
Expensive what?
Bri, it just turns it into a very, very expensive hangout. So I'm like, no, I mean,
It's funny that you bring this up because I was actually showing my wedding photos to a colleague, and he was like, "Why are you so serious?"
yeah,
And I was like very serious until we did, we said the I do's, and
yeah,
there's something about like hearing those words
Sure.
that before you actually commit, it like really weighs down on you, and I wanted it to, like it should have gravity, and you said that earlier. At the very least, you should understand the gravity of what you're doing.
yeah.
To an extent, yes, what you're getting into, you have no idea what the problems are going to be, and you are not equipped to solve them.
No.
So in that sense, you are ignorant and ill-equipped, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think have the willingness to know this is going to turn your life upside down.
Yeah.
And actually go, for better or worse, I'm actually going to be willing to commit to it.
Yeah.
So it's not something you go into lightly.
No, not at all, bro. And so I'm thinking about the husband who is currently going through a death, and he probably feels like I was gonna divorce here, bro. That's how bad things are,
Yeah.
And it's just like, yo, man, I didn't realize, because again, that, bro, we can have marriage prep, and marriage prep is good, and you should go for marriage prep, right? But marriage prep is not gonna thoroughly, completely, fully equip you for some of the punches that you're gonna get.
I think if anything, do the prep.
Yeah.
But if there's marriage post,
Yeah.
like if there's
that's
like that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one, bro. That's the one. Post marriage
And I kind of felt like
counseling, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, shucks, there was a lot of emphasis on this marriage prep thing, but wish there was like more of an emphasis on, okay, let's check in. How's this really going? Like,
yeah. How's that worked out for you, bro? Like, where did you find encouragement, comfort in the moments when you were experiencing, marital death, and obviously then finding that comfort and encouragement and finding hope brings you back so that you can, hit another year to actually get to the point where you're 6 years now. It's wild, maybe because we're part of it, and now I'm like just adding on to my thoughts that 6 years feels like a lot. When I think, because I was speaking to your father-in-law, and they just hit 32, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's it, bro. That's older than you, bro. It's wild to think about that.
that is insane.
But at the same time, because of how many people divorce very quickly,
Yeah.
6 years is also wild.
In Hollywood terms, it's excessive. 6 years is like,
Yeah, you're trying too hard.
what are you doing?
Like, quit. You're giving the rest of us a bad name, bro. 6 years feels wild. 10 years feels like are you guys on drugs? Like, And then you hear 32, or your parents 34, 35.
Yeah, these
what's
numbers
up?
are
You're
just
like,
kind of.
there's a couple we know in our church, 42, bro, last year. I'm like,
That's really cool. But I think better than the number,
yeah,
what does the marriage look like?
quality, yeah.
Because you can stick it out. And
Yeah.
some people just be like, you are stuck
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
And we're not getting divorced. That's going to be like committing social suicide or
Sure.
whatever it is. So as a
Sure.
status thing. So I think, what does your marriage look like after 7 years? I actually don't really care too much about the number.
Wow.
So whether it's now
Yeah, bro, that's
6,
good.
32.
That's good. So how do you ensure that your marriage has quality? So where do you go for
God, like,
encouragement, comfort? Yeah.
just now you said in those death moments, what encourages you, what gives you hope. When you're going through those things, or at least for me, I mean, it feels awful.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say, oh my gosh, I feel so hopeful in this terrible moment. like it's realistically for me, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's painful. Like having to change who you are or how you think is painful. And I think when we look back and talk about the pain points, those are the points of discomfort that spring to mind. There's nothing nice about those moments. It's like going to the gym and maxing out your reps, and now you're experiencing pain. But you see the muscle gain,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah. Come on, bro.
Boot.
Yeah.
You know. So that's then you look back and you see the growth, but yeah, like I don't think we need to glamorize those moments.
Yeah. Sure.
Sometimes they're just ugly.
Yeah. And you said God gives you comfort. What does that look like?
Well, yeah, sure, he does give me comfort because I know he's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's with us. So no matter what, you know, and I think he's taken us to some pretty low places where you don't have anywhere else to turn.
Sure.
Because I think naturally, as human beings, we don't want to turn to God. So he will show you that even if he takes you here, he's still there with you. And I mean, you basically pray and look back. You see how he works retrospectively. So I think next time you hit a hitch and have to reinvent your marriage, then what comforts you is the knowledge that he's brought you through, you know, he's through this path, and you kind of go, well, brought me through that, you can bring me through this, you can bring me through anything.
Sure. That's cool, bro. Yeah. This whole thing.
Sorry, and I think just to think that the puck doesn't stop with you. You know,
Yeah.
as the man,
Sure.
you know, we were talking about like having all the answers and needing to know what is the solution, how do I get us out of this? You know, I actually think maybe this is, I don't know if it's, well, it's not controversial, but counterintuitive. You know, we don't have those answers.
Yeah.
And a lot of the best solutions we've come up with are together. That's a big thing that I've had to realize.
Sure.
Like include my wife.
Yeah.
And not be Chuck Norris trying to figure out, you know, I have this, you know, 10-step program on how we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And I've tried that. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Sure.
It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, this is the vision. And I guess that's good, probably to a point. But if, like, I would drill down into steps and think this is the path we're going to lead. And so, yeah, number one, works out better when you're doing it with your wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, the puck doesn't stop with you because God is the one who's sovereign over everything.
Yeah.
He's sovereign over your mistakes.
Sure. And he'll use them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I think that should give you hope.
Yeah. That's great, man.
And something Meg said to me, you know, because she's left her job now, as you know. And she kept going. She said to me, like, what if this is a mistake? I said, maybe it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, so what?
Sure.
Like, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And we're going to make mistakes. And you kind of only know sometimes once you've done them.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that sounds like, I'm not saying you just went through a death, but it sounds like you've entered a new life, a new stage of your marriage. You know, obviously, getting a job, coming out of a job changes your marriage. You know, the kind of job that you get. So if it's like demanding on the hours, you know, whether you have to travel, whatever the case is, that's also going to change the shape of your marriage. But obviously, work is a big thing, and so I think to even make some of those decisions to leave. Says I think you've entered into a new season.
Yeah, we definitely have. Circumstances have changed, which means we have to change.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that saying of change being the only constant has always been unsettling to me because, like, I want to, you know, reach the ultimate idea of who
Yeah.
Michael is, and
Yeah.
then just live that out. But it's a
Welcome
pipe
to
dream.
the world, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. That dream only gets actualized at the end.
Yeah, at the end.
At the end. Real death.
Yeah.
At the end.
I was listening to the guy was talking about anxiety, and I think I shared this with you, but it's basically when you go through these moments of discomfort, is to just sit in it,
Sure.
and
Sure.
feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable,
Yeah.
feel anxious,
Yeah.
and it's almost like a muscle that you kind of get over it, and whatever you do to whether it's breathing exercises or whatever, and a few minutes will pass and the feeling goes away. But not to fight it and kind of like it's this foreign thing that you're trying to get rid of,
Yeah.
but take it in and acknowledge that you're going through it.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
No, I think that's
I don't know if this is now
what.
realistic. If you tell someone with anxiety, just do that, and they're like, well,
I think it's
stuff
how
you.
I think it's how you say it, because sometimes for people who especially deal with like severe anxiety, they probably I mean very highly, are constantly bombarded with advice from people who are well-meaning, who want to really be helpful.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and then everybody seems to be an expert because of YouTube. And so somebody who then deals with extreme anxiety, by the time you come and say, hey, I think you need to sit in this thing, they're like screw you, you like the 100th person who's told me how to live life, which adds on to my anxiety, so.
And that's actually another thing that you need to do.
Yes. Yes.
I think a lot of it is like, I am so anxious because I'm doing all these things.
Yes.
And having to keep track and keep up.
I'm being told.
And you're just like, oh, well, here's another thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it.
But I think it's probably good advice for yourself,
Yeah.
And I think in light of the conversation we're having, when your marriage gets to like a hard patch, probably to sit there and not run away.
I think take the blows when when you need to, take things like take the heat.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I'm more one of the, I don't know if I'm a sensitive guy. I think maybe a lot of guys are, have a lot of like pride, and the words that are said tear them down.
Sure.
Tear down their confidence and make them feel like failures or whatever. And I think a lot of us carry that around.
Sure.
Maybe some of us are just more likely to show it instead of hide it. But sometimes Meg will say something that is not intended to hurt, but hurts because of the baggage that I carry.
Yeah.
And that's my problem. I have to work through that. And I think that's also been another point that's made me want to avoid conflict. It's because I know I'm going to receive criticism. And as someone who's not had a lot of self-confidence growing up and carrying ideas of failure or, not being comfortable in who you are, those words can very easily just knock you off.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a point of growth for me.
Sure.
Is to really kind of go like, okay, listen to the problem. Like, what is my wife saying? Hear her out. Don't just immediately think, oh, she thinks I'm a failure. Or, And because that's when it becomes, unhelpful.
Yeah.
Now you're heaping things on yourself which aren't really there.
Yeah. Sure.
So I think maybe the concept of failure is something that you become more familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not failure in the sense that I'm a failure. It's just that this thing I'm doing, it's not working.
It's not working, yeah.
It doesn't mean anything
Yeah.
that you suck.
Sure.
It just means you can pivot and change. And I think that's helped me to hear her voice.
That's dope, bro.
And not be closed off to it.
Yeah.
And there's like a filter in us as guys, I think, where we kind of just assume that the woman is wrong. And you're like, whatever's coming out of your mouth now means completely something different. Like, let me read between the lines.
Yeah.
And and synthesize, because I'm the one who knows what's going on.
Who knows what's happening.
And
Wow.
my point of view is the authentic one.
Sure.
She's probably getting caught up in her emotions.
Sure.
So all these crazy things that I would bring to the table,
Yeah.
which are not true. And like I say, when she's done that and had an opportunity to speak to me, and I've heard her, then we can actually move to something better.
Yeah. Sure.
And you do that together. It's not like, oh, she's unhappy, so let me start formulating things.
Mm,
And then I'll present it to her. Like,
Sure.
bad idea.
Yeah. Sure. That's great, bro. Because I'm like, there's so much freedom in knowing that you can pivot in your marriage. But I think a lot of dudes don't think that. And maybe even wives don't think that your marriage can pivot. Your marriage can end without divorce and you can move on
Right.
to something new. And so every big fight feels like a divorce. Feels like a divorce is looming. It's going to come around the corner because of this big fight, but not
Yeah.
realizing that there's freedom in getting in the fight. To how you started now, I'm anxious that we're fighting. I'm anxious that this thing might end. I'm anxious that I really blew it. I'm anxious that I'm dealing with all these feelings of failure. But I can sit in them if I have the freedom of knowing that I can pivot. This is not the end. It's not, my marriage is not going to end. And I need to be free to believe that. I need to be free to know and understand that, so that when I do get out of this, then we can actually move on to what the next thing is and actually pivot, So I'm like, there's just so much freedom in thinking that, but knowing it.
There is. But I mean, what is it for you that makes you believe that? Past experience, or
Yeah, so
how do you believe and think that?
God, yeah, bro. Ultimately, because I realize that, one, for my worldview, God created marriage. He instituted what marriage is. He sets the rules for what this thing is. And so then that gives me freedom to think, because somebody can hear that and interpret that as, well, hands off for me. If this thing fails, it's God's fault.
Right.
And I'm like, nah. I think I say that to say He has ways of how to then keep this thing going. And part of what I'm talking about and the freedom that I'll get in understanding and knowing that my marriage can pivot is because I believe He's carrying it, right? So I'm like...
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because to your point of the feelings of failure, it's hard for me to not think I'm not the failure. It's hard for me to think I don't suck.
It is very hard.
It's very hard,
Yeah.
right? And coupled with that, to what you are speaking about now, if you tell me I'm a loser, it's going to cut. You're my friend. My wife uses the same words. You could say, Black, you are a loser. Cut, it's going to hurt. My wife says the same thing, Black, you are a loser.
It's a death blow.
Death, bro.
It's a death blow. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? So I'm like, one, maybe this is probably a note for wives to say, just understand the kind of influence you have, right? I don't want to say it's power, but it's an influence that you have. It's not a power, right? at all. Because again, once marriage becomes about power play, we stuffed, we screwed, right? But there's a sense in which we can influence each other.
Yeah, it's
and
responsibility.
we should influence each other, and we should be responsible for the health of this marriage. And so there's an influence and a responsibilities wives carry in how they use their words.
Yeah.
Because if my wife, again, says to me, I think you can really conquer and become great. I don't care what snakes, what guns, what armies are in the way. I am going to conquer and be great, bro.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I'm glad actually you touched on this, because it's like what your wife said at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And she sort of flipped that topic to a positive thing.
Yeah.
And I think on the plus side, and my wife's, she's been so great in using, encouraging words and praising, like when I've done something good, or saying, I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it wasn't for all the time she said things like that. I don't know how I would look. So there's, in that sense, they like you say, the influence is huge.
Yeah, bro. No, massive, man. And so I think those three things work hand in hand. The wife's understanding of her influence over you, and you understanding your influence over her. But as a husband, knowing that when failure happens, sure, you might have been a flop that led to that failure in the marriage, and you need to take responsibility for that. But overall, if you're not in a general attitude and posture of destroying your marriage, most failures might not be directly because of your fault, your doing, right? And sure, to some extent, as somebody who's supposed to lead, you might have, let go of the steering wheel and it caused you guys to shake a little bit. But generally, if you're not trying to destroy your marriage, failures doesn't mean that I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'm a flop. But then the freedom of knowing that you can pivot. I think those three things, bro, will help when your marriage does hit another speed hump, when you get to another season of death. Yeah, that's going to force you guys to come out alive and grow and be better, etc., right? And I think for me, having those three things, but also realizing that even with those three things, to your earlier point, Scott is still sovereign over this marriage. That gives me ultimate freedom. Yeah. That says, okay, even if I do fail and believe that I am the failure, it's okay. If there's someone higher than me and my wife, a bigger vision than us, bigger purpose of why we got married, then I can rest knowing that this thing is going to work at the end. We might get there limping. It's going to work, right? And again, to your earlier point of quality, even when I speak of limping, I'm not like, we're crawling and we just look like a mess, but like we'll limp, but still look very suave, right? And that's just what life is. Like, you're not going to get to 50 years still running. You might be crawling, but can I crawl like just, looking very suave?
Crawl nicely.
Yes, crawl nicely.
It's like, do better than that.
Yeah. Right.
What were those? Those 3 points that you.
Yeah. So your wife's influence over you and your influence over her, knowing that failures don't mean you a failure, and the freedom of knowing that you can pivot.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, those are good.
Yeah.
And I think, understanding that your marriage is a safety net for arguments and fights to happen is the way that you're going to grow.
Sure.
So, and I think, there'll be a lot of stuff out there about how to fight and how to conflict resolution, and not just no, fighting's good, let's swear at each other. Yeah. That's not what we're advocating here. But I mean, I think that understanding that that's what marriage is by design. Like, we're in it no matter what, sickness, health, up or down. Yep. That, okay, let's address these problems together. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, there's freedom in knowing that that the marriage is not gonna fail.
And doing it together, man, which is something you've constantly said.
Yeah.
Don't do this alone. You didn't get married alone. You know, pull your wife into the conversations.
Yeah.
Pull your wife in and seek advice. You know, if she's supposed to be a helper, it means you're lacking in other areas where she can clearly help.
Yeah.
And is probably, you know, better equipped and has some wisdom and knowledge around that area. So seek for help, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for dudes to humble themselves
Yeah.
to seek for help, you know. Which is the point I was trying to make earlier. I just forgot, but it's once you don't do that, you then either become a tyrant and you're just forcing your will,
Yep.
or you become passive because you always feel like I'm just a rubbish person. Anything that I do, you know, my wife is probably going to shut down, or I don't even have the
Sure.
humility to go to her and ask for help. So let me just keep quiet. And then you remain passive. And I'm like, both are detrimental to a marriage.
Okay.
But to what you were saying, I think, yeah, it's going to be hard to admit that maybe I'm wrong or whatever. It's going to be hard to even admit that you need help. But I think coming to that middle and saying, hey, I actually need help. Why? And if you care for your marriage, again, those three things, if you know that your marriage can pivot, might be that moment where we need to pivot. We need to, but it's only going to be initiated by you coming to ask for help and humbling yourself, and going to your wife with a posture of humility and deep concern for the future health of your marriage. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So when you said either you become a tyrant or you become passive,
Yeah.
like, is there another way you could say that? Would that be dominant or submissive?
Who?
Or maybe submissive is not the right one, but maybe domineering versus being like you've checked out because you know that nothing you come up with is going to be received well.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of it in other terms, because you know, what does passive really mean? The domineering, easy to picture.
Sure.
You know, there's my way or the highway.
Sure.
Anyway.
Passive, yeah.
But,
Passive is not taking initiative. Passive would be
letting things happen.
you know. So I've shared this before. I forgot which coach said this, but they had asked him like how he, speaking about, you know, just coaching and winning matches, and he said, well, like, you can either just let the match happen and then you win. It's hard for you as a coach to take credit for that. I mean, you know, people would have assumed that you actively coached, that's why you won, but that's just what happened. You know, you won, but you actually did not actively coach. The game just happened upon you, and no serious coach will take that, you know, as a badge of honor because you didn't do anything. Or there's the coaching where you actually step in and coach, you know, actively, and it might lead to a loss. You might lose, but that loss will be received differently than when you were passive and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know,
even if it's just on the level that you've you know, you're taking ownership for it. Either way.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
commit.
And if you win,
Jesse,
that's gonna feel amazing. If you're actively coaching.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the similar thing with being a husband. If you sit down, don't do anything, let your marriage happen upon you, your wife is going to be upset, she's going to be unimpressed, she's going to be very despondent, angry, etc., and that just leads to an even further down spiral.
Yeah.
But if you humble yourself, because you want to actively coach and step in, it's going to be hard, it's going to be counterintuitive, but when you do pivot and it becomes a good thing and your marriage is much healthier, your wife is going to love you, bro.
For sure.
And you're going to feel amazing.
Instead of resenting you.
Instead of resenting you, bro. Yeah.
I think to build on your coaching analogy, you know, if you're a team, there's an idea that the leader now needs to have all the answers and to, you know, lead, you know, with an iron fist and and I think good leaders ask for feedback.
100.
So
100.
you know, if you're together as a partnership, you need someone to hear your ideas, and you need a sounding board. You know, that's when things really become good. You know, whether you know professionally, whether it's coming up with innovative ideas or whatever the case may be, but like that's when ideas come to life, when they've incubated and they've been bounced off. You know, they don't just happen generally by yourself. And so I think, because you were talking about humility and coming to your wife, you know, sometimes you can just say, look, I've had this idea, this is the problem I'm trying to address, and I've sort of been thinking about beginnings of an idea. What do you think if we did this? And not be very precious about if that's not going to work out, like your idea gets shut down. But because you're looking for a solution. So it might start as one thing, and then after talking a bit, it'll transform into this and go, wow, you know, I've said this a few times to her, like, I would have never come to that conclusion by myself.
Sure. 100, bro. 100.
So that's quite a beautiful thing. And I think it's just a natural thing. But somehow when it comes to marriage, maybe we kind of have this different lens on it, and feel like we need to do it all ourselves.
Yeah. And it probably speaks to the fear you had of not being honest in the early days. Definitely. Because there was that fear that this thing is too precious, I love her, and I just don't want to mess it up. And so at that point, it's not a malicious fear, it's just a genuine fear.
Exactly. The motives can be good. But you will find out that how detrimental they'll be.
Yeah. Yeah, man. This has been great, bro. This has been dope.
It's been great.
In closing for you, bro, if your wife was in the room, and I mean, as this plays, she's watching it.
She will be.
Yeah. So she's watching right now. What would you say to her about the next time you're going to have to pivot?
The next time we have to sort of make a change.
Next time your marriage dies. And the phoenix has to rise from the ashes.
I'm quite glad that she's become a Harry Potter fan now. Before it was just me. Now she's a super fan, bigger fan.
Is she?
Yeah.
That's dope, bro. You know, I've never read or watched the Harry Potter movie or book,
really?
bro.
Why are we friends?
That's the part of our friendship that needs to work.
Yeah, you need to pivot, man.
Is this where our friendship dies and starts to live again?
Forks the phoenix, rising from the ashes.
Come on now.
I think I'd say just look back at all the times we've had to change before, as an example, and think back of how God has been with us. You know, it's not to say that life is like we're living an idealistic life. You know, we've been through some really challenging times, but looking back on them, those are the things that, for me, remind us that we can get through it. So, look back in order for encouragement to look forward, and to know that God has been with us in all those other moments, and He's not going to leave us now. He never will.
Stop, bro. Micho, appreciate it, bro. That earned you 6 more years.
Oh, that was easy. Just leveled up.
Come on, now. Come on, bro. You passed out, bro. That's great, brother. And I appreciate you, bro.
You too. Thank you.
Appreciate you for breaking the mold, for being the first white guy to embrace the 2.5 platform.
Represent.
Come on, now.
All the butts out there.
All the butts. Pull through.
Looking forward to seeing the the next butt,
Yeah.
he's gonna be on your show.
That'll be
Brew.
fun. Come on,
And then we'll have our own group. We'll have a support group.
yeah,
All the guys who've
afterwards.
made it onto the show.
Yeah, the white
Like-
2.5 husbands.
Yeah. No, that's probably not a good. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, we're gonna get cancelled for this. But anyway, bro, appreciate you, man.
You too. We can
Yeah,
hold,
we can
hold
hold
hands
hands.
again.
Alright,
We can do the prayer circle. Like,
Let's do it, bro. Let's do it. That's the one. Thanks, man. 2.5 husbands. We'll see you on the flip side. All right. Peace.